Hi, family. I'm an addict called Derek. I met our speaker about 4 years ago when I got involved with regional service, and the thing about her that impressed me the most was her very ambitious desire to make sure that we do things right here in Narcotics Anonymous. She has worked very hard over the time that I've known her in doing her part in making sure that we do things right, such as following our traditions and learning about our concepts and serving this fellowship. She has been very inspirational in my recovery and helped me go through some really difficult times, and I in turn have had the opportunity to be of benefit to her as she's gone through some tough times of her own in recovery. And the message there is the hope that we give one another that what we cannot do together, or what we cannot do by ourselves, we can do together. It is a joy and a privilege to introduce a very good friend of mine, Dana H.
I'm an addict. My name's Dana. Can you hear me okay? I can't? Okay. I'm really nervous and I'm really scared and my butt's wet. So, as I adjust myself up here, it's for good reason. Oh, I'm so scared, and I feel like I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Yeah, deep breath. Thank you. However, I have brought my God up here with me, and I've brought our literature, and I can assure you there will be a Narcotics Anonymous message shared. See, and I thought it was organized. My clean date is January 17th of 1989, and the first time I was introduced to a recovery, a fellowship, was when I was 19 years old. Between that time and the last time that God cleaned me up at the age of 25, I could not stay clean, and I did not know why I could not stay clean. Mostly in the beginning, it was because of the differences. I went to meetings, I listened to people share, and I thought, you were really sick. No, there's no way. That was denial. And several times throughout those years, the disease, of course, my using, got progressively worse. All those things I said that I would not do, I did. I went to many other fellowships. My husband said I'm not supposed to talk about AA, but I have to. And I am so grateful to that fellowship and to the several other fellowships that I attended that opened their hearts and gave me so much love and let me be at their meetings because I was so lost. And it's not because of them that I did not stay clean. What it was is I did not understand the first step. I thought that if I came and admitted that I was an alcoholic, that was the first step. But I continued to use. Sometimes I stay clean for a couple weeks. Every now and then I get 3 months together. At one time I had almost a year. And I have been taught that people that relapse is because of a failure to work the first step. Well, I could not work the first step because I did not understand the first step. And I really did not want to come to Narcotics Anonymous. My image of junkies was just that Narcotics Anonymous was filled with a bunch of junkies. You know, those homeless people laying out on the streets, didn't take a bath, don't brush their teeth, shooting dope, and that wasn't me. And the truth is that the longer I stayed out there, the more it was me. The more it was me. It did become me. And later on in the steps, in the fourth and fifth step, it talks about the masks have to go. And that was a big part of the first step for me. And in our literature, it states, we reached a point in our lives where we felt like a lost cause. We had little worth to family, friends, or on the job. That's if you had a job. I didn't. Any form of success was frightening and unfamiliar. We didn't know what to do. We were sick and tired of pain and trouble. No matter how far we went, we always carried fear with us. We were hopeless, useless, and lost. And that's what I was when I got here. And I kept telling people, see, I relapsed so many times, I was embarrassed. I was so embarrassed. You know, it's hard to imagine an addict being embarrassed, but I was very embarrassed. I was clean a little over 3 months before I came to my first Narcotics Anonymous meeting, and the only reason that was is because I was set up on a blind date. And other people call that a 13th step. However, I know for a fact we only have 12 steps in our fellowship. And even though that caused me a lot of pain, this gentleman brought me into Narcotics Anonymous. He was trying to help me. I thought we were going on a date. And even though that ended up in a very, very painful situation for me, it did bring me into Narcotics Anonymous because my God knew how to get me into Narcotics Anonymous, and it was through a man. And he was really cute too. Oh my. And I would ask addicts, how do you work the steps? They said, read the text. Well, I didn't have a text. And at that time I had moved from Minnesota to, I went back home to Iowa, where I spent the first 3 years of my recovery. And I don't know why, but they wouldn't give me a basic text. They said, get a job and buy one. You know. Now at the time, I didn't want a job. You know, it was more, you know, it was a full-time job looking for a man. You know, and I was not just looking for a man, I was looking for a husband. And I made that very clear. So after so much pain from so many men, and of course it was their fault, I got a job. And I was almost 9 months clean before I got my first basic text. And I read it, and I read it, and I read it, and I read it, and I kept reading it, and I kept reading it, and I still felt all those feelings of being hopeless, useless, worthless, desperate, very, very, very lonely. And I would tell addicts, I am so miserable I can't stand it. They said, work the steps. I said, I am so lonely, I cry every night when I go to sleep. They said, work the steps. I would tell them how angry I was. My daughter was born when I had around 3 months clean. I got this baby. What am I supposed to do with this baby? Work the steps. I was so sick and tired of people telling me to work the steps that one night I remember, this is so naughty, I promised myself I wouldn't swear. I was so angry that I took my text and I threw it as hard as I could against the wall. Now I want to tell you, if you throw your text against the wall really, really hard, it will break. That's why I have my husband's text, because mine's broke. And so I broke my text, although I still have it. And at that time, there were no suggestions to me. There were no suggestions. I was told these are the steps that made our recovery possible. They did not suggest that I get a sponsor. They told me to get a sponsor. It was not suggested that I get involved with service work. I was told you will get involved with service work. And although that made me very mad, I came to a point I was willing to do that. And I was still staying a little confused about this first step, and I didn't understand why people at meetings, at Narcotics Anonymous meetings, were getting upset with me when I was introducing myself as an alcoholic and chemically dependent. And yeah, like that. People were laughing, and they'd roll their eyes and make jokes, and they said little cutesy things like we still say, they call me an ANDA, fence walker, and all this, and I'm all confused, and I think I'm being honest, and I'm working a first step. And so I got a Narcotics Anonymous sponsor that took me by the hand and walked me through the first step. And what I learned about the first step was, I use analogies a lot because that's how my mind works, was that it's like a marriage or being a parent. It's an all-package deal in the first step for me. And that's why I never could grasp that first step, because I wanted to pick and choose what I was powerless over. And I thought that first step said that I was powerless over alcohol. Wrong fellowship. That first step was telling me that I was powerless over this disease. And this disease was not just about the drugs. And I did not want to hear that. They told me to stay out of relationships for my first year. Well, you know what I told them. And I can't repeat it because I said I wouldn't swear. But as I decided to pick and choose what I would be powerless over, that's when my life would become unmanageable, and it still can today. If I choose, and I wanted to choose what was convenient for me to be powerless over. It was enough that I was powerless over the use of drugs, and alcohol is a drug. That was bad enough, but the whole rest of it was just too overwhelming for me. So then my sponsor takes me on to the second step, because the literature states the first step leaves a void. And in that second step, our literature talks about some of us will pass over this with the minimum of concern. And because what I read in the first step was not what was written in the text. What I read was, yes, I'm nuts, I'm crazy, I'm insane, let's move on. You didn't know me my first couple of years, because if you did, you'd say, yes, she was. Yes, she was. And still can be. I don't know if this is a good thing or not, but there are a lot of addicts in this room that have known me for a lot of years, and you guys have really long memories, too. It's just like, let it go. In the basic text, it states that insanity is repeating the same mistakes, expecting different results. So another addict taught me, use the dictionary. So I looked up the word mistake in the dictionary, because I like to make sure that, always have a way out if I need one. In the dictionary, mistake was defined as an incorrect idea or opinion. And the first thing that I wanted to address was an incorrect idea. And what I would like, if you would please, is for all the women that have a year or more clean to please stand up. And there you go. Women do stay clean and recover in Narcotics Anonymous. We know what the men do, okay? Yes, you stay clean. And you know what? I don't want to bash men because some of my best friends are men, and I love you so much. Because I came to Narcotics Anonymous, and men hugged me. And some of them were not copping a feel. And I had friends that I could go to a motel with and sleep in the same bed with, and we're not going to have sex. That's a friend. I have real friends in Narcotics Anonymous today. And from the background that I came from, being molested as a child, at the age of 16 I was raped. I went from one abusive relationship to another. I came to Narcotics Anonymous, and I'm telling you what, I couldn't take any more. I did not want another man to ever put his hands on me. And I needed someone to hug me and not cop a feel. The other part I wanted to talk about in that second step, the insanity, I believe one of the greatest forms of insanity in our fellowship is gossip. And I know that the number one source of gossip is the disease of addiction itself. I've started gossip. I've listened to it. I've participated in it. I made it bigger than what it was. And I've been on the giving and the receiving end of gossip. And I got to tell you what, it's got to stop. And all I can do is for myself, by practicing the first step, is it begins with me. I cannot afford to gossip about other people, and we know the difference between having concern and gossip. My family has been through a very difficult time the last couple months. And back in February, I miscarried our son. And it was the greatest pain that I had ever felt while using or being clean. And I was suicidal. And the truth is I attempted suicide. However, that turned into Dana relapsed. And I didn't even know about that until 2 months later. So I want to tell you that it hurts very much. It hurts very much. The gossip hurts. And some gossip kills addicts. And some gossip will lead addicts to leave Narcotics Anonymous and find recovery elsewhere. You know, I'm not saying that we're solely to blame for people that relapse or kill themselves, but we don't have to help out. And today, I won't. I will not be a part of it. In the third step, this has always been the most difficult step for me. The big G. Big God. And I was scared to death that there was no way I could not even comprehend this thing about God. And I would go to addicts and ask them, do you believe in God? Well, what is your God like? And it was kind of like the basic text. They weren't going to give it to me. You know? I'm sorry, you can't have my God, you got to find your own. That was what I held. And I was just nuts with this thing. And I was scared because I didn't think that if I could not find God in the third step, and I wasn't going to be able to work the rest of the steps, and I would surely relapse. Because I was told if I didn't work all the steps, that I would use. And I was scared to death. So I became this, kind of like this bounty hunter that was like looking for this really bad criminal outlaw God. Because I was giving him a piece of my mind and let him know just exactly what I thought about him. I was very, very angry, very angry that this God that you all kept talking about that was so loving and forgiving and all powerful and all knowing, that this God stood by and watched me be molested and watched me be raped. I had my first child when I was 16 years old. I didn't know what I was doing. Well, yeah, I mean, I know what I was doing, but I was just a little girl, very naive. Before my daughter was 3 years old, I gave her up for adoption because I used to live and live to use. And it's very hard to live to use and use to live and be a mother. And also, chase men. And I did a lot of things that people were offering as suggestions. They weren't telling me, they were suggesting. And they suggested I try this good orderly direction thing. I was just way too pessimistic for that. I didn't believe there was good in anything. And I did not grow up in a home where we talked about God. We did not pray. It was every man for himself. And, your life is a result of you. And the only person you have to depend on is yourself. And so I did not come from that kind of foundation or that type of home. And I was given permission to just use whatever worked for me. And for many years, it was me connecting with nature, and it still is to this day. It's the sunset. It's not this much rain, but when there's rain. And what I believed is that you believed. And I believed in the spiritual principles of Narcotics Anonymous. The honesty, fidelity, we'll get to the fidelity later, but the willingness, perseverance, I believed in that. And I trusted that even though I did not believe in God, I trusted that you believed in me. And I did have people that believed in me. And it states in our Just for Today reading, just for today I will have faith in someone who believes in me and wants to help me in my recovery. And for several years, that was my God. And thank God for the women in Narcotics Anonymous that did take me by the hand and teach me how to be a lady, teach me how to be a woman, and teach me how to be a mother, because I did not know how to do any of that. And taught me how to not only get a job, but keep a job and pay bills. And eventually, it took me 6 years, but I got a savings account too. And that was a really big deal for me. I've had the same phone number for 9 years. That's a really big deal. The fourth step, I know, and I hear people talk about how scary the fourth step feels. And for me, I enjoyed the fourth step. Because I felt so useless and worthless and hopeless. I couldn't wait to tell somebody how cruddy I really was. I knew how cruddy I was. I knew every nasty little thing I'd ever done, and I used the fourth step as a tool to hurt myself and to punish myself. And what I found out later on through the rest of the steps was the Narcotics Anonymous steps were not meant to hurt me and to find out what's wrong with me. The steps in Narcotics Anonymous is about the truth of who I am and what I'm about and what's right and what's good. And at around 6 years clean, I decided, after talking with my sponsor, of course, that I would write a 4-step about my relationship with God or lack of. And so I did an inventory on what that was about in my life. I've done a 4-step on my mother. You can imagine what that looked like. But what I enjoy the most about the 4-step, and I do this cutesy little thing that I call it the Dana Show, that I get to write about how I feel. And that feels like a deep breath right there. I get to talk about, I didn't like the way you looked at me at the Friday night meeting. I get to be honest, really honest, and just lay it all out there. And all that stuff, those feelings and those attitudes and those behaviors and the thinking, I get to put it out there. And every time I've gone to do a 5th step, I've asked God, please listen. And the first time that I did a 4-step on my inventorying the relationship with God, that was the first time I invited God into my life. And all I asked was, please listen. I have some things I need to say to you that I've been carrying around for a lot of years. And I don't know what's going to go on here, but I need you to listen to what I'm saying to you. And I believe he listened to me. I've had several sponsors since I've been in Narcotics Anonymous. Most of them fired me. Mostly, for the most part, they've chosen to find recovery elsewhere, and that's very painful. When I hear that I can't stay clean in Narcotics Anonymous and I need to go someplace else after 15 years of being here, I don't understand that. And I don't have to understand that. I just have to pray it's not me. And I pray that if someday that should happen and you hear out of my mouth, I can't find recovery in Narcotics Anonymous, you don't let me go. Because I need to be here. Bless you. The most beautiful experience I ever had in the 5th step was when I shared it with a woman. Of course it was with a woman. And I'm sharing this with this woman, and I look up, and I look in her eyes, and she's crying. And she told me how sad that she felt that all those things happened to me. And I'd never seen another person ever cry because they loved me so much, and it hurt them to know that those bad things happened. And that's the first time I really felt a connection with another woman and really, truly felt loved. And I hope that if you don't have a sponsor, that you will get one, because there is nothing like the love of a sponsor. In the 6th step, the literature states that our character defects are based in self-centered fear. And I knew that's what my 4th step was all about. It was all about fear and how I was acting out on fear. And what was important, the most important thing for me in that 6th step was I was really, really willing. I was ready. I was willing because I got so sick and tired of me. It used to be I was real sick and tired of you guys, but I got real sick and tired of me. And moving on into the 7th step, I realized I used to think that the world was divided up into two kinds of people. There were addicts and there weren't addicts. And as if we like existed on some other planet or something, and we were special because we're Narcotics Anonymous. But I always felt different. And I didn't want to be clean in Narcotics Anonymous and still continue to feel different. And the 7th step taught me that the only difference between addicts and those other people that aren't addicts is that we go to extremes. And I really felt like I belonged to a part of society again for the first time. I do fit. I do fit. In the 7th step, and it works how and why it states, in working this step, we move away from intellectualizing the recovery process. Our concern is not to determine exactly how or when our shortcomings will be removed. It's not our job to analyze this step. This step is a spiritual choice, a choice that goes beyond any emotional reaction or conscious act of will. Another big relief, because me intellectualizing anything, I mean, I can barely pronounce the word, let alone, do anything good with it. And I do get frustrated. I get very frustrated because although I believe God is good all the time, sometimes He just doesn't work fast enough. And it's been so important over and over and over and over again, and even today in my life, to practice patience. I have to practice patience. It also states, we walked into our first meeting with a spiritual void. Some essential ray of spiritual light had been cut off. We had lost the ability to love, to laugh, and to feel. For so long, people had looked into our eyes and had trouble seeing the human being behind that blank gaze. Today, I like who I see when I look in the mirror. And for so many years, I didn't like that. And for so many years, I didn't even know who that person was. I did not know who that person was. And I love the theme of this convention, We Grow with Love. That's why I like who I see in the mirror today. Because of the love that you have given me, I've been able to grow with love. In the 8th step, making a list of all persons we had harmed, there was not enough paper. And that was in recovery. Some people say, well, work the 4th step like there's not a 5th step. Okay, right. Write the 8th step like there's not a 9th step. Sure. Thank God that we finally published the Stepping Work Guide, the Step Working Guide. Thank God. And as the last time when I went working through the steps, in that 8th step, it no longer was just a matter of putting names on a piece of paper and organizations and the phone company and the landlords and all that. And then that's very important. What the 8th step taught me was I'm the common denominator in all that. I was there for it. Now that doesn't mean that everything that goes wrong or goes bad or is bad is my fault, but I'm still there for it. And what I realized in the 8th step was I was not being honest. The Step Working Guide stated that If I walk away from a relationship and not tell you I'm ending the relationship, that's on me. And I need to go back and tell you I'm ending this relationship. I was taught early in recovery, don't ever take somebody someplace where you can't bring them back from. Oops. The newcomers that I slept with, I shouldn't have been doing that. And I am so grateful that I had an opportunity to go back to these newcomers and tell them how sorry I am. And I was wrong. And I learned in the 8th step to be honest in my relationships with my family, my biological family, the members in Narcotics Anonymous, with my children and with myself and with my God. And I've noticed that when I'm honest in my relationships, the 8th step isn't that long. In the 9th step, people told me it was important in making amends that I change my behavior. But somehow it got lost that I'm sorry is not important. I'm sorry is very important. My children need me to say, they need me to hear, I'm sorry, I was wrong. My husband needs me to say that. I can't fall back on this thing where, well, keep coming back, you'll see I'm different. People do need to hear I'm sorry. I need to hear I'm sorry. When I hurt somebody, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally, and it states so in the text, harm is, whether it's intentional or unintentional, I need to say I'm sorry. In the 10th step, I've learned how important it is on a daily basis to look at what Dana's doing, to keep a check on my thoughts and my feelings. For so many years, I just stayed angry. I kept angry. I stayed there. Because I really didn't want to talk about how much I hurt and how sad I felt, how different I felt, how alone I felt, how lonely I felt. And I didn't want to tell you how much I needed you, because if I let you know that, then you were going to hurt me. And in the 10th step, I have to be honest about that. That in the 10th step, we promptly admitted when we were wrong. That promptly admitted means for me to be honest with myself immediately. And nowadays, through a lot of painful experiences, I've also learned that before I make amends, I talk to my sponsor. You know, that gossip thing I was talking about. I was taught that when I gossip about somebody, it's not about going up to you and apologizing to you that I gossiped about you. I have to go to all the people I gossiped to you about and tell them I was wrong. Try that once or twice. Talk about humbling and humiliating. In the 10th step, it states the importance of keeping in touch with our thoughts, attitudes, feelings, and behavior cannot be overemphasized. Every day, life presents us with new challenges. Our recovery depends on our willingness to meet those challenges. And sometimes those challenges just feel like they're too much. This whole living life on life's terms. Sometimes 24 hours is way too many hours for me to deal with. And even today, sometimes it's important for me just to get to the next 5 minutes because I don't know what's going to happen in the next hour. And I don't know how to deal with the next hour. And I've learned a lot from watching other people with less than a year clean. The lady that came up here with 14 days clean, oh my God. The courage in that is unbelievable. And I thought I felt scared and afraid. Oh my goodness, I can't imagine coming up here 14 days clean. And I think it's really a big deal when people have 14 days clean, and 30 days clean, and 63 days clean, and 57, and you know, I used to think, once I get that 1-year medallion, I got it. And I walked around my 1-year medallion, showed everybody, and look, Dad, I got a 1-year medallion. Yeah. But I'll never forget how so hard that was to be clean for 2 weeks. Oh my God, that was hard. And I remember waking up and knowing, oh my God, I've been clean for 3 months. Oh my God. And that was such a big deal for me. It was so huge. And that was so much bigger than all the other medallions that I've ever received. Now don't get me wrong, I like my medallions, okay? I like them. But it was so hard. Those first 2 years, it was so hard because I wanted to use all the time. All the time. And that's all I could do is pick up the phone and say, I want to use, click. Pick up the phone, I want to use, click, and do that for hours on end because all I was doing is drinking coffee and smoking cigarettes to get from one meeting to the next. That's how I existed. That's all I could do. In the 11th step, through prayer and meditation, I practice meditation a lot. It's through practice, and it has taken a lot of practice, I've learned to still my mind and just be. And the greatest feeling I've ever felt is just being with me and being with my God. Sometimes I just meditate on God and God's presence. And sometimes, for the most part, I meditate just on being here and being alive each day, and what a gift that is for me. And I don't take that for granted. I did take that for granted. I took that for granted for a real long time. And after, as Derek made it very obvious, I became complacent. Thank you, Derek. See, and it states in our text, we are each other's eyes and ears, and that's important. Without that, I'm not staying clean anyway. I didn't know how, I didn't know that I had become complacent until I lost that baby. And within 6 weeks after losing that baby, my husband walked out on me and was going to file for a divorce. And I didn't know how complacent I had become. Because at some point, I stopped going the extra mile. I took it for granted that people would just keep being there, and I didn't have to do that extra something. Nurturing the relationships that I have. And of course I take it for granted that I'm going to show up in my home group every Friday night at 6:30, which I'm going to say this, it kicks ass, okay? I have the best home group in the world. And the fact remains is that addicts do bleed. And I never know when the last time I see you will really be the last time that I see you. And I have gone to funerals of addicts. And many of us have experienced death. And whether that's the death of our parents, or a parent, a grandparent, a child. And as silly as this might sound, the death of a pet. You know, our little puppies and dogs mean a lot to us. And I have to tell you the truth, the first time I ever cried at a Narcotics Anonymous meeting, I had over a year clean, was the first time because my hamster died. You know? But you know, I went to that meeting and I cried because my hamster died, and you know, people didn't laugh at me. They talked about when their hamster died. In the 12th step, having had a spiritual awakening, I remember the first time writing about that, and I called my sponsor and I said, what spiritual awakening? What is that about? So she told me to read literature. And I reflected back on how my spirit had awakened through the steps. And I don't want to leave out the traditions. I've learned the importance of unity, fidelity, and that's why I wanted to talk about fidelity. When God cleaned me up this last time, I said, I will do what you want me to do. I won't stay have a relationship for a year, but I'll do the other stuff. And so I went to the 90 meetings in 90 days. I got involved with service work. I followed you wherever you went. I went with you. I just went. And I was told through the members of both fellowships, Dana, you've got to stick with one fellowship because nobody knows you. And the reason I chose Narcotics Anonymous is because I remember going to NA meetings and listening to people talk about feelings. They weren't talking about specific drugs that they had used. And that was real important for me because there are some drugs that you've used that I haven't. There are some drugs that I've used that you haven't. You know, and this competitiveness about who used what, how much, and I can drink you under the table and all this kind of crap wasn't going to work for me anymore. And the members of Narcotics Anonymous taught me and continue to teach me not only to feel but talk about feelings. And that it's okay. I hear people talk about outside issues. I don't even know what that's about. My children are not an outside issue. If I am having problems at work and this is affecting my recovery and I'm all screwed up, it is not an outside issue. Now I'm talking about for me, for myself. I'm probably making some people angry, and that is not my intention. Our fellowship is facing some very serious issues that we weren't facing, like way before I ever even thought about getting clean. We have members with terminal illnesses, HIV, AIDS, hepatitis. I don't believe that's an outside issue. And you know, when I think about that second step, it states in It Works How and Why, sanity is not having to act on that first impulse. And I can be impulsive just like that. And that's not an outside issue. The internet. Do we really want to talk about the internet? And I've been taught to tell on myself. There have been times I've spent more time on the internet than I have with my children. Pornography, chat rooms, I don't know what do they call it, NA chat rooms. And I really don't have an opinion one way or another whether or not you want to get your recovery in an NA chat room. It's none of my business and I really don't care. But these are issues that are going on in our fellowship that we do need to talk about. And we can't act like that they don't exist. And I'm very grateful that people allowed me to bring my daughter to Narcotics Anonymous. You know, because I couldn't afford a babysitter. And I was told a lot of times, if you can't keep that kid out of this meeting, don't come to this meeting. I was told that, and I needed to be there. And now look at us. We have NA children in the other building making more money than the merchandise is. I don't know if that's good or not. And I wanted to say thank you. The most important part of our literature to me is the first word in all of our steps, and that's we. Oh my God. I don't know, who knows it or not, but after we got here last night, my husband and children had packed up and they were going to go back home because they couldn't afford to stay here. We couldn't afford to have them stay here. And you guys pitched in enough money so my family could stay here this weekend. And I can't tell you how much that means to me. And that's how it works in this fellowship. We just help each other. I don't know specifically who to thank, but I want to thank all of you for letting my family stay here, because my God knew that I need my husband to be with me, and I need to be with my children, because they're so important to me. And thank you to the people that had enough faith in me and believed in me that I would come up here and share a Narcotics Anonymous message. And what I want to close with, I probably talked way too long, that any addict that is clean is a miracle. Regardless of clean time, it is a miracle. And from this girl that had that child at 16 years old and gave her up for adoption, dropped out of the 10th grade and got a GED, because of Narcotics Anonymous, because of you, and through the love of my God, I was reunited with my daughter 4 years ago. The really cool part is not only does she love me, she likes me. Can you believe that? And through Narcotics Anonymous, I went back to college. I got my associate's degree. I got my bachelor's degree. And last week, I got my master's degree. Don't get too excited, I don't have a job. Whatever all the little initials are that goes behind my name, the most important one is that I'm an addict. And I'm staying in Narcotics Anonymous. Thank you for letting me share.